I was mixing to this half-inch machine, and I'll never forget, someone said, I bet you can't tell the difference between half-inch and Pro Tools. And I said, I bet you $100 that I can. And they sat me in the middle of the room and turned me around and faced the wall and played me the mix 10 times. And I said, that's digital, that's not. And of course, I got 7 out of 10 wrong. The moment that I realized that my era of tape was over.
David Bendeth is one of the most prolific names in rock, and if even he can't tell the difference between tape and digital, how could you? More importantly, if that truly is the case, why do we still see so much analog gear? Why does he still mix on a $100,000 console?
And so I like to remember the more musical sides of where I came from and then attach them to plugins and Pro Tools, but there's still nothing like this console. And what I love about it, it's like a piano. But I remember, how important it was to put my hands on the faders because it made me better connected to the music. So I'm constantly riding the faders because I see it as a piano. I don't see it as a bunch of faders attached to a console. And so I like to use the more modern plugins and aesthetics to enhance what's already here.
Obviously, the gear would have to have its advantages. Audio is subjective, but the success of these sounds speaks for itself. For those of you watching this who are mixing in the box, are you using an SSL style plugin? Do you have a favorite?
We can go through the gear in here, and I don't mind. I'd like to show everybody the console. When you guys are all working on your SSL plugins at home, this is the real one. Mike, you're using the plugin, the SSL, both of you using. Are you both using the same SSL plugins?
We have different favorites.
Mike, so we got 2 engineers in the room. This is my favorite. I know I can't always be here. I'm not stupid, but let's ask.
We also both own SSLs too.
Okay. Both of these guys own SSLs, and they're using plugin. This is interesting. Now, Joel, you're in on this discussion. What is it that makes a great SSL plugin? Why would you pick one over another? And what is your reason for picking? In other words, the technology, the code itself is written in such a way that it's more pleasant to your ears. So I'm going to start, Joel, with you because you're a professional mixer. What do you use and why do you use it?
Okay, well, I think this is going to shock a lot of people, but to me, they all sound the same. They all have the same sonic signature. Maybe the curve measures differently. I haven't broken them out on one of those graphs because I'm not that nerdy. But there's something about the software that always sounds like the software, no matter how what order the UI is in, no matter what. There's just always this softness to it and lack of definition in the space. And I didn't really realize it because I've been mixing in the box for 20 years until I got an Origin in front of me. And a year ago, I bought some hardware strips racked off of 4K. And just comparing, just putting signal through them at Unity, you hear it change and you hear it saturate in a way that the plugin doesn't. So for me, the plugin is what I'm most comfortable with on the UI. Now, Joe, and I argue about this all the time. I learned the Waves SSL because that was the one from way back in the day, and that's what I know. And he's tried to get me to switch to the Brainworks one, and I always get lost in that plugin because the way the button, everything just feels foreign because I'm just so used to the Waves one. And I've tried all of them, but honestly, to me, they all kind of sound the same. Yeah, okay, so the Brainworks one, maybe it does have a little bit more non-linearity, distortion modeling in it or whatever. But at the end of the day, it sounds to my ear like a plugin, and I prefer the hardware. So that's why I bought an Origin, because I have 32 strips in front of me.
Here's my question directly to you now. Why is it the Origin is better than the Waves plugin?
Well, oh boy, I don't want to take all day with my answer, but the short version is being able to reach out with your hands, like you said, and touch the music. It also has a way of putting things in a space, a back to front, a left to right, and a top to bottom that digital cannot do and does not do correctly. And I don't know why, because we could measure it on a scope and we could come up with the same numbers mathematically, but I'm telling you, and I've seen anybody that's ever walked in the room, we've compared it, and many people have walked in this room, you hear the difference immediately. So for me, being able to just reach out, touch the music, immerse myself in it, move around what I'm mixing, I feel like I have to use less tools to achieve better results and things. Just, it's more musical. There you go.
I make this short. You're telling me that it's the ergonomics that
Part of it.
and not necessarily the sound. In other
No,
words,
sonically, the board kicks the shit. Don't get me wrong. Kicks the living shit out of the plugin.
Good. I'm going to ask my good friend here, Rick Carson, who has a wonderful SSL. He has a 6,000 broadcast console, which is a wonderful console as well. What it is about the plugin and the console are different.
Recall.
There you go. So
No, it doesn't. Not like a plugin.
Not like a plugin.
No, I hate recall. It's the bane of my existence. I work on, lots of stuff every single day. So even when I'm utilizing my console, I use it in a very unconventional way where I use all of my channels as hardware inserts in the box.
we're back to ergonomics. What's the sonic difference between an SSL console and a plugin?
Well, the plugin shits out. So you can push the console further, I feel like. I have found that the Waves plugin, the original one, sounds the closest to my console, but I can definitely go further past 9 decibels on the desk than I can on ever in a plugin.
Mike, you started before you had an SSL, you were on this very console, this 9K.
Yeah.
Now you have your own SSL at home.
Yeah.
What is your main difference between this, which you learned on, and your plugin?
I feel like we talk about this a lot, that there's technical things to a mix, but what really matters is how it makes you feel and how it makes the listener feel. And that, to me, is the difference. When I grab that EQ, the way the mid-range just makes something like come alive, it just feels a certain way coming out of the speaker. It's just not the same when you grab a plugin. It's like so close and it gets better every year, but like there's that feeling of like there's an energy and something's coming alive coming out of the speaker when you grab these EQs.
So I think the answer from all three of you was really the same, that it musically helps.
Can I add something, David?
Yeah.
I think switching to a tool like this has brought out a substantial amount more emotional impact in my mixing. And I have a hard time quantifying that in terms of why, but I feel it. And it's like obvious. Like I can feel the note, the bass player playing, where if I'm mixing in the box, I don't feel that movement the same. So that to me is something else the SSL hardware does versus the plugin. There's an emotional component which defies logic, but it's very, very apparent if you're in the room listening to it.
So now I'm going to talk as a guy that was on an SSL for 30 years before there was such a name plugin. If that's what you know and you get used to it, it becomes your partner in crime. If you grow up and you've never seen this and you've never stepped into this room, you would never know the difference between what this is and a plugin, because you would not know the sound difference. And I just heard somebody say, like, they kind of get there, but it's not exact. But now everybody that's worked on a console, except for Rick, who said, look, I hate recalls. I don't want to bother with this crap. Let's bypass it. This is easier to work with. But I think if we actually forced Rick in a stranglehold, he would tell us that the SSL sounded better than a plugin.
I did not say that I want to buy.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't. I say that I use mine
We got him.
insert so I can print it in real time, so I never have to recall it. I still EQ and compress on my desk. I just don't ever recall it.
So it seems they all agree there is something more musical about working on the console. But are there other advantages? If you watch David mix in real time, you'll see exactly why the SSL is worth every cent for him.
What I'm going to do is what I normally do. I'm going to kill everything that's not involved. Oh, it's going to come through there. Like, I'm going to kill everything. So everybody has a different way they would start a mix, and everybody has a different philosophy on why they would start a mix that way. I know a lot of people that put up everything. To me, it's just like, and you start moving things around till they sound good. Here's my kick. The kick is comprised of some pre-mix samples of, I think, one thing at this point on top of the original kick drum. So Aaron Gillespie should be ecstatic. what I'm about to do next is listen to the overheads, the room mics, and the faraway mics as well. So we
Hey,
got
David, just because you're unable to talk during the, when you're playing back audio because it mutes the mic. I wanted to clarify for everybody watching because a few people are asking in the chat. Correct me if I'm wrong, but to summarize, you blended in your parallel kick with your normal kick, which you're using an ADR, and the snare you're doing the same thing. Okay, so you have like a normal and a parallel, and then you're sending that on a send to those reverb units on the far end. You got the SPX and the AMS to create different types of characters of reverb. Did I miss anything?
Oh, that's exactly what I've done. That's basically the kit.
I think this is really a mind-blowing takeaway for anybody at home who sat down for hundreds of millions of hours in their dungeon, EQing and mixing drums. The fact that you literally just brought up a drum sound that sounds that good with a couple of samples, some parallel compression, a couple of effects, and fader balance. You didn't touch an EQ, and it sounds absolutely punishing. I mean,
balance. It's balance. And it's the console that's doing its job. And it's also staying true to what Aaron Gillespie and Goldman came up with in the room. So this is not oversampled here.
Is there any individual channel compression that you're using?
No, not really.
Insane. He was able to put together an incredible drum mix so quickly, and without even touching EQ. It just felt really good the whole time. Like, watching it happen, you could tell exactly what's going on with the sound, and you aren't distracted by plugins or waveforms. You're just internalizing it. It's just happening. What is your most musical piece of gear that adds something you almost can't describe? Thanks for watching. I hope you were able to learn a lot. I was definitely enlightened to the beauty of the analog process, something I don't want to do. I like working in the box. It's way cheaper. So if this gear could all be bullshit, that would be great for me. That would be so sick. But I have been really wanting to try some kind of DAW controller now after 3 mixers in a row, all smashed their mixes using the feel of the knobs instead of parametric EQ. So that's fun. Happy mixing. And I'm going to leave you with a final thought from Bendeth that might just blow your mind. See you next time.
Here's what my drums sound like. They sound like this. I've been crawling around in the dark for a while, crawled out across the floor, not collecting dust anymore, to find me a parasite, to find my host. Trapped beneath the floor, I slowly waste away. Now I pull my frail body into the chair. I look me in the face. Oh, disappointments, so disappointing. This may be my last one. It's going to be good and hard. It might be a touch out of key. Okay, make your drums sound like that.